Hi, good day. In this presentation, I will explain my midterm examination material for English 3. The topic is complex sentences, focusing on adverb clauses and adjective clauses. My name is Adhminingsih, and this presentation is prepared based on the assigned material. Okay, here is the outline of my presentation. First, I'll talk about complex sentences that use adverb clauses. Then I'll continue with part B, adjective clauses. And finally, I'll give a short conclusion to wrap everything up. Okay, let's begin with part A, which focuses on adverb clauses. An adverb clause is basically a subordinate clause that works like an adverb. It has a subject and a verb, and it gives extra information, such as when something happens, where it happens, why it happens, or how it happens. So it helps us explain actions more clearly. In complex sentences, adverb clauses play an important role. They connect a dependent clause to an independent clause, and they help show relationships like time, cause, contrast, or conditions. In other words, they make our sentences more meaningful and complete. Adverb clauses usually answer questions like when, where, why, and how. They also modify verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Since they always start with subordinating conjunctions, they help link ideas smoothly. Now, let's look at some conjunction differences. After is used when there is a small time gap between the two actions. Meanwhile, once and as soon as show that the second action happens immediately without waiting. Here are the examples. She felt tired after she finished her work. The clause explains the time after an action. After shows sequence with a time gap. They left as soon as the bell rang. There is no delay between the two actions. The moment the bell rang, they left right away. And last example, he will call once he arrives. This shows immediate action right after arriving. As soon as he arrives, he will call with no delay. So, the main difference is that after allow a little time gap, while once or as soon as means the next action happens right away. Next, we have when and whenever. When refers to one specific moment. For the example, I listen to music when I study. In this sentence, when refers to one particular situation, the moment I study. Meanwhile, whenever means anytime or every time something happens. Example, you can visit whenever you want. Here, whenever means at any time. It tells us the action can happen repeatedly. So, when is specific and whenever is more general and repeated. Now, when versus by the time. When shows two actions happening at the same moment. Example, he was asleep when I called him. Meanwhile, by the time shows that something was already finished before another event. Example, the show had already started by the time we got there. So, when focuses on the same moment, while by the time focuses on an action that is already done. Now, let's look at because and now that. Because explain a general reason. Example, she was late because her car broke down. Meanwhile, now that explain a reason based on a new situation. Example, now that you are here, we can begin. So, because is for general cause, while now that is used when something new changes in the situation. Next, we compare even though and even if. Even though expresses a real fact that contrasts with another idea. Example, he went jogging even though it was raining. Meanwhile, even if talks about a hypothetical or imagined situation. Example, I will support you even if you fail. So, even though it's real and even if it's hypothetical. Alright, now we move on to part B, adjective clauses. An adjective clause is a clause that describes a noun or pronoun. It gives extra information about a person, thing, place, or idea. The main function of adjective clause is to specify or describe to the noun more clearly. It helps us understand exactly which person or thing we mean. An adjective clause also has a subject and a verb. It begins with a related pronoun like who, whom, whose, which, or that, or a relative adverb like where, when, or why. Next, I want to explain the functions of the relative pronouns and relative adverbs, and I'll also give simple examples for each one so it's easier to understand. So let's start with the relative pronoun. Who is used for people as the subject. For example, the student who received the award is brilliant. Here, the clause who received the award describes the student. Whom is also for people, but it is used as the object. For example, the person whom I met yesterday was friendly. The clause whom I met yesterday explains which person. Which is used for things or animal. For example, the car which is parked outside is new. The clause tells us which car we are talking about. There is more flexible. It can refer to people or things. For example, I like the movie that we watched last night. It specifies the movie. And last, whose shows position. For example, she is the artist whose paintings are famous. It tells us the artist who owns the paintings. So now let's move on to the relative adverbs, where is used for places. For example, this is the cafe where I usually study. The clause describes which cafe. Next, when refers to time. For example, I remember the day when we first met. It tells us which day we are talking about. And last, why. Why gives a reason. For example, she told me the reason why she was late. So, all of these pronouns and adverbs help connect the clause to the noun and they give extra details that make the sentence clearer. Now, let's talk about essential and non-essential clauses. First, let's look at essential clauses. An essential clause gives information that we must know to understand which person or thing we are talking about. Because the information is necessary, we don't use commas. Here are two examples. The student who answered correctly will get a prize. The student who answered correctly tells us which student, so it's essential. Next, the phone that fell on the floor is broken. The clothes that fell on the floor helps identify which phone, so again, no commas. Now let's move on to non-essential clauses. These clauses only add extra information that is helpful. The meaning is still clear even if we remove the clause, so we use commas. For example, my brother who is doctor lives in London. The clause who is a doctor is extra information. We already know which brother, so it becomes not essential. Next, the novel which I finished last week was exciting. Here, the clause which I finished last week only adds extra detail. Even without it, the main sentence still makes sense. Okay, to wrap everything up, adverb clauses help explain why, how, or under what conditions something happens, while adjective clauses help describe or identify nouns more clearly. Both of them make our sentences richer and easier to understand. Well, thank you very much for watching. Once again, my name is Adhminingsih from Associate Degree in Informatics. I hope the explanation I shared helped demonstrate my understanding of adverb clauses and adjective clauses. Thank you very much and have a great day.